around. He doesn't actually have books. Who has books that you open with your hands anymore?
I think people are like, is that an encyclopedia set? That's where we get thrown off.
It is. This isn't just any encyclopedia set. This is the set of encyclopedias that my parents made me use for reports in elementary school. And when I finally cracked it open and looked at the date inside and realized it was published in 1968, I thought, oh, maybe my dad had used these for his reports too. So there we go.
We're old, Eddie, because I remember doing that. We're old.
It's a blast to open it up and learn about, the Soviet Union.
Those two.
Yes, or the CCCP, depending on how old that is.
Or depending on what what book letter you got, right?
Yeah.
Yep. My teachers used to inform us to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to do the official business here, but if you've got something more entertaining, please, please stop us. Oh, okay. I'll do it then. We're ready to go. It is 32 after the hour, and that means it is time for another Ask Me Anything with a Pragmatic Institute instructor. Thank you for joining us if you're here in the Zoom, and hello to anyone out there watching us in YouTube land. Good to have you as well. I got to give a plug at the top here, if you haven't joined it yet, for the Pragmatic Alumni community. Who needs community more than we all do right now, of course? It's been a crazy year. The Pragmatic Online community will fill that void for you in your professional life, at least. The PAC, as we call it, is the forum for impassioned product professionals, where you'll be able to exchange tools and templates, examples and tactics. And of course, we are pleased to offer the PAC as a complimentary lifetime membership to anyone who takes or has taken a public or online product class at Pragmatic Institute. A huge resource for you. Don't miss out on that. Go do it. And the other cool thing I get to announce at the top here is my favorite new segment in the Ask Me Anything series, which is the free lunch. So for you folks that have joined us here in the Zoom, we're going to give away at the end of 5 minutes to whoever our instructor feels asked best question today. And completely arbitrary, there are no rules. Whoever the instructor feels asked the best question today gets a gift card for a free lunch. So hang around at the end of our 45 minutes to do that. And with that, of course, it is time to introduce that instructor, Diane Pearson, Pragmatic Instructor Extraordinaire, my first instructor that I had. And it is always a pleasure to have you here and answering questions. How you doing? Are you feeling talkative today, Diane?
Well, instructors, that's just one of those questions. And of course we are.
I know, that's like asking, is this guy blue? Is this instructor talkative?
We are very talkative, but I'm really looking forward to the questions. And Linda, actually, I'm really glad that you asked about how you sign up for the PAC. It's the Pragmatic Alumni community, so PAC. Hey, welcome. And you know what? She's got a lively background there. I'm liking that very much. And great glasses. Thank you. See, and I'm just one of those people, I'm going to comment on everything I see. So there you go. So this is great. So Sarah's going to get you the link. And just to be sure, Sarah, also give her that promo code, because my understanding from some of the students is you still need the promo code to get it for free. Otherwise, you pay the price. So just if you could just remember to post that too, that would be great.
Great.
So
fantastic. Oh, and we can now call it. We can call it the award-winning PAC now as well, because they've gotten awards for their online communities. What were you going to say, Linda? Go ahead.
I was just going to say I appreciate that lifetime, because like I said, I took those courses quite a while ago, back when you were just Pragmatic Marketing and not Pragmatic Institute. So
and that's been a couple of years for sure. Yeah. So if you did take the classes probably about a year ago or more, then by all means, take a look in the chat and look for this that we're posting for Linda as well, because the Pragmatic Alumni community is very, very active. There are a lot of really cool subgroups inside there. There's also jobs. As a matter of fact, one of my connections has just sent me 2 job descriptions that I'm going to be posting next week for a really good company. And he's a terrific person to work for. So lots going on in there, always something good. And I definitely recommend it. It's a way to keep that learning going, which is one of the most important things. Classes, we love teaching, we love being with you students, but you got to keep it going too. And in practice on that day-to-day, it's just great to have somebody to ask questions. So, yep, definitely join the pack.
You said it. And speaking of asking questions, of course, we are in an Ask Me Anything session. And so, reminder of the rules, there are none. It's very loosey-goosey in this session today. If you have a question that occurs to you, you can either unmute and ask out loud. You can post it over there in the chat. You can post it just to me, or you can post it to the whole group, whichever you're more comfortable with. I'll keep an eye on the chat and throw them over to Diane as they come up. But be sure to do that. Oh, and then of course, if you submitted one earlier, I'm going to read those. But if you have any other clarifying questions about your question or someone else's, just jump in there and ask it. It's just a big, happy group of people having a talk today. So glad to have you here. Diane, I'm going to throw you this first one that I have that was submitted by Bassam. Bassam asks, in your distinctive competency training, you provide a lot of nice examples of B2C companies that strayed away from their distinctive competencies that led them to fail. Colgate, microwave dinners, Cosmopolitan, yogurt companies, those are the ones that get mentioned sometimes. Can you provide some B2B examples in this vein as well? Diane.
I can. And Bassam, what a great question, because distinctive competencies is one of the best concepts that we teach. It's one of those that really gets you thinking in a different way. So before I start, just very briefly, let's remind everybody what a distinctive competency is, back from foundations class. So distinctive competency, most of us talk about core competencies, which are anything that your company does well. The difference between a core competency and a distinctive competency are 3 things. One of those things is not only do you do it well, you are known in the market, acknowledged in your market to do this better than others. The other thing about that is it's hard to copy, not impossible to copy, but difficult to copy. And then the third thing is this is something that actually is almost part of your DNA, whether you know it or not as an organization. It's really something that everybody is reinforcing all the time, whether it's your legal team or your sales team or your product team. And so these are those kinds of things that really do make you uniquely you. So when I think about that, when I think about B2B, the challenge with B2B examples is always that they tend to be so involved that unless you come from the industry, it's hard to understand. So when I heard this question, I thought back in my own experience. And not only did I think of 3 B2B examples, I also thought of what went wrong so that maybe you can apply that universal lesson in a B2B setting. And so the 3 things I thought of were, first of all, hanging on too long to something that used to be a distinctive competency that the market doesn't care about anymore. And that's a hard thing to let go of, because most of our organizations became successful because we did this thing really well. I mean, it was our distinctive competency. I worked for an organization that was a data company. And so this data was used to help businesses decide what types of credit terms to give other businesses. So how did they pay their bills in the past, and how stable were they? All sorts of data that we gathered, and we assigned a credit rating to these companies. And other companies decided, well, we'll give you terms like you can wait 60 days to pay us, or maybe you have to pay us before we send you the product. But this data that we gathered was then used for marketing. And so we started this whole new business, and this data was so high quality because we personally interviewed the businesses. Well, that also made it really expensive. It was really accurate, really up to date, but it was really expensive. Now, this is going to age me to sort of like the encyclopedias, but at about this time, the ability to scan and database data from print media as well as scrape it from websites with accuracy was really getting strong. And so competitors were coming along who could get this marketing data, address, a line of business, some basic information. They could get that for pennies, sometimes pennies per 100 or 1,000 of names. So they were selling it at about 1/10 of the price. Now, the company I worked for, rather than just realize, the market has shifted, we kept trying to sell this based on quality. Quality, quality, quality. We're 99.999% accurate. Well, here's the thing. And our customers were telling us this. You know, this data you're using for marketing, it's a 12-cent postcard, okay? If this postcard goes to a paint store or a hardware store that's in that location, I don't really care. It just doesn't matter that much. And we had been the predominant business, not only in that credit area, but also in the marketing area. But this insistence on clinging to this thing that the market didn't care about anymore, this distinctive competency that wasn't anymore, actually allowed two very big competitors to come along, and they are now the predominant, one of them particularly is the predominant provider of that information today. So that was lesson number one. Lesson number two, ignoring non-product problems. Most organizations think a distinctive competency has to be about your product. So the product has to be really fast, or it has to have more data than some other product, or it has some reports, whatever it is. They think about the product. Well, this kind of goes under the heading of distinctive incompetency, I hate to say. I worked for a company. This was software and services for lawyers and law firms. So it was data, it was workflow enablement software, time and billing, just broad strokes, everything. Well, there was my company and this other huge company. And essentially at that time, there were hardly any other companies that did this. So it was us and them. We all did everything. In the particular area that I was investigating for my company, we were losing business for small law firms. So everything that small law firms needed, they were leaving us. And we were doing win-loss interviews. Well, what we discovered is the products, honestly, they couldn't tell the difference. And to tell you the truth, they weren't that different, almost nothing. But what we did find out was that one company was the nice company to deal with. And it wasn't us. As a matter of fact, during this investigation that I and my team were doing, we were building a word cloud because we were going to do this big presentation at a sales meeting. Well, the biggest word in the word cloud was jerks. Jerks. Okay, so here we are. We've got this word cloud. It's 2 days before the global sales meeting. 2,700 salespeople coming to this meeting in Las Vegas, and we're going to show them a word cloud that says we're jerks. We were really debating whether we should even bring this, but we did. And it took the meeting, it derailed the meeting for an hour. We ended up having a conversation. The sales leadership got up on the stage, the product leadership, we all were up there and basically having this meeting in front of the whole sales team. Well, it actually was the fact that this company was actually kind of jerky. I left shortly after that. They were just kind of jerks. And I went to work for a different company and I realized they were jerky to deal with. They were hard to deal with. People were unhelpful, unempowered. And that was the distinctive competency this other company had, not anything to do with the products. Products were truly almost exactly the same. But I know as a partner to both of those companies, I gave the nice company better deals. If we had to make a decision whose data to ship first, we shipped theirs first. And it grew and constantly reinforced their distinctive competency, which was being the company that was easier to deal with. So it's not always your product. And that's another B2B example. And the third one, sometimes organizations grow up able to do it their way because the market didn't know any better. I worked for and sorry, folks, copyright brokerage. I know, snore, but copyright brokerage, actually, people own rights to content. They are willing to sell it to other people so they can use it in journals or magazines or textbooks or movies, all sorts of things. We were the ones who brokered those rights. Well, for a long time, we had been able to sell these rights because nobody else was doing it. There was no other way to do it. But there started to be much easier ways to do this, including online. Our company did not spend any money at all on their online ability to do this. And so what actually used to be this complete sideline, one-off, I just want to purchase rights. I want standard ability to do this. Oh, no, it's too complex. We have to negotiate this. We have to take this to the publisher. Well, actually, the publishers who decided to just put their rights online and say, here's the standard price for these very standard things, their content was sold so much more often that some of the publishers who we had long-term relationships with, started to get really angry with us and actually took their rights back and decided to sell them themselves. Until my product team caught up with basically the 20th century, not even the 21st. And so just because it was a distinctive competency before, you really have to interpret what that means as you go forward. And so there are a lot of caveats about distinctive competencies when you're first trying to figure out what yours are, when you're trying to make decisions in the market about what to do, and also how to make sure you don't have this distinctive incompetency. You don't want to have jerks be the big word in your word cloud. So those are some of the things that I thought of. I don't know if anybody on the call has any thoughts or questions about that, any follow-ups, but boy, this distinctive competency question, so important.
Linda, is that a hand raise?
Yeah, or finger. It's my index finger, though. I did have a follow-up on that. I like the use of incompetency, and what I'm struggling with now at my company, I'm new to this company. I'm getting back into product. I was doing project management, but I have, product background, but now I'm getting back into it, trying to reorient myself. One of the things that my company is struggling with is scalability and standardization of processes. So when you talk about incompetencies, internal, I think, if the structure and the background's not set up to produce the product in an efficient way and communicate, then I know that's not customer facing, but at some point it will be customer facing because, behind the curtain results in how the customer experiences.
That's right.
And so what we're grappling with is my task is to our biggest problem is sort of communication and structuring the communication path around our product development framework, all the way from inception to release, to make sure each of those steps. And, I wanted, one of my questions, and I hate to take over because I just wanted to, but do you have any,
you get to ask.
Do you have any best practices or tools or references around that I could, it's such a huge task. I don't even know where to start. We're going to do some, customer mapping, some communication mapping using Miro and that sort of thing. But I wanted to see if Pragmatic had any best practice or a framework around that.
We do a lot. As a matter of fact, a lot of what we do ties very well into what you're talking about. Scale is one of the most difficult things for businesses to do. Well-established businesses, they've sort of forgotten that pain. Startups aren't there yet, but that scale piece, that how do we normalize this and make things happen that in and of themselves might not be normalizable, but we've got to have some way to do this at scale. Right. And so there's some, first of all, shameless plug for the class Focus. That's where you learn to do this. So shameless plug for the class Focus, but if you don't, go into the Pragmatic Alumni community. You already have access to everything that's there, including all the tools from the Focus class, even if you never take the class. Okay. So there's a lot of great stuff in that, and also people looking to that, where do I start? How do I implement? Let me give you a couple ideas though. First of all, the concept of common language, it's one of those things you cannot beat. And common language is just something that's easy, cheap, and quick to put into a business that helps. And so when you create common language in an organization, you have to remember to do three things. And they're critical because people use high, medium, low, slow, medium, fast. They use all these terms all the time, but they don't do the critical steps that are necessary to create the common language out of it. So use terms consistently, whatever they are. So high, medium, low, big, small, medium, large, whatever they are. That's step one. But step two is define the term. For every organization, when you think about, I've talked to so many CEOs, well, I want my team to bring me the next big idea. The question I always ask them is, do they know what you mean by that? I've worked for small companies where the big idea translated into $15 million or more in revenue. I've worked for companies where if it wasn't 50 or more, 50 million or more, they didn't want to hear about it. And so, first of all, get a term. Second, define it for your company because those definitions will be different. You hire people from different companies, they're going to think they're different. So align around a definition. And then third, examples from your own company. So you remember that product we built that went, that just went global. It was fabulous. That's an example of a big idea. This is an example of a small idea. That aligns the entire company, and anybody who comes in, you can just give them that knowledge. It's easy, it's fast. So that's my first advice, because it's fast and cheap. Just start with definitions and examples and consistency. Seems you're welcome. That's where I would start.
And Diana, this could vary by company, but how frequently should we assess our distinctive competencies to make sure that they are still distinctive and competencies?
That's one of those things that I would say, as we always talk about market research being this constant conversation with the market, this constant cycle of discovery and validation. I would add to that discovery, validation, and monitoring. That's something that I always tell my classes to do, because hopefully at some point during this discovery and validation, you start to say, that persona of Dolores, we have a lot of knowledge about that persona. We can turn our attention to something else for a while, but you do need to check in there. And so with distinctive competencies, would I always be listening? Yes. I mean, some things that you start to hear from your customer support is, you people are really hard to deal with. I mean, they're going to tell you it's not, those signs will be there. If you're starting to develop this distinctive incompetence, sales was coming back constantly in that first example saying they don't care about quality. They're telling us, I don't care about quality. If you're listening, you'll hear it. But officially, I would say once a year, at least, just go back and say, does the market still care about this? Are we still good at it? Is anybody else getting better at it? It's like I said, hard to copy, but not impossible. Those are all things those are the three questions I would ask. Are we still good at it? Do they still care about it? Is anybody else getting better at it than we are? Once a year, I would just stop, ask those questions really quickly.
Good. Well, there we go. Obviously, so much to talk about with distinctive competencies. We've covered one question so far and gotten a library of information out of it. So I'm going to move over to our next submitted question, which is from Randy. Randy asks, what are some ways I can best get a complete snapshot of our customer's journey besides the mapping icon from Google Analytics? Although insightful, I find it limited. What other options are there?
And it is limited. Just like so much of that information used to only come from sales. Well, it's great that now we have all this insight from things like Google Analytics and our own websites. And there's some tools that even attempt to attribute like exactly the 9 or 10 or 12 steps that somebody in the market made right before they bought the product. But it's still not everything. One of the best tools you can use, and it's a very manual tool, is win-loss interviews. Win-loss interviews are the gift that keeps on giving, because you can go to the organization and you can say, hey, when did you realize you had a problem? That's the beginning of the buyer's journey or the customer journey, not when they go online to find something. If you think about that, you think about the beginnings of a company, and I do this with law firms because I spend a lot of time building products and services for lawyers and law firms. Law firms, solo law practitioners, they need everything a 100-person law firm does, but they can't afford it. And so at what point are they going to buy? This was something that was a big question for us. And we had to go ask the law firms. When did you know, for example, you were going to want to have marketing software? What about time and billing software versus just manually sending out your bills or doing it through PayPal or something? And what we discovered through these discussions was they hoped to be able to solve these problems as soon as possible. But about the time they were able to start solving some of these problems was about the time they hired their 5th attorney. Not the 5th employee, but the 5th attorney. They might hire a paralegal or a legal assistant or an admin. But about the time they hired attorney number 5 was when they were going to start seriously looking at software. Now, that was an easily knowable thing in our world. That was something that you could go find. And it was incredibly helpful because, yes, there was information out there. But when they got to that point, you could start actively marketing to them. And that was about the time they started listening. Now, you weren't going to learn that on Google Analytics. There was no way to learn that, really. That was something that was really important. So win-loss interviews tell you these things. At what time, like, how big is your firm? Was there an event? Sometimes it's an event. Sometimes when you get to, for example, 50 employees in any company, you start having to do things to document compliance to a lot of regulations you didn't have to comply with before you had 50 employees. There are all sorts of things that Google Analytics might not necessarily tell you that you can get from a win-loss. The other things are, they're not going to tell you, Google Analytics isn't going to tell you why. Google Analytics is going to tell you where they went, but not why they did it that way. It's also sort of kind of good at telling you who did it, but not necessarily everybody who benefited from that. So those win-loss interviews, that's where you can ask all those questions. That's why win-loss is just the gift that keeps on giving. So don't give up on win-loss interviews just because you've got electronic data.
Beautiful. Post any questions, our Zoom group here in the chat if you'd like to get one in. In the meantime, I'm going to go over to Darlene, who asked, what should we be looking at when it comes to prioritization of releases? They all seem equally urgent and pervasive. Any thoughts? Coming from a design background, this reminds me of when somebody asked, can you bold this, also this, and bold this, and make this bold? And my reply is always, if everything is bolded, nothing is bold.
Yes.
It can't be all bold, right? But for Darlene, everything is equally urgent and pervasive.
Yeah. That's one of those things that whole prioritization process. I've worked for organizations where we've done 1s, 2s, and 3s, and everything was a 1. So then you had to go to like 1A, 1B, 1C. I worked with an organization where we actually had that down to 4 levels. And that was more outlining than I did to get my MBA thesis done. So you got to stop the madness. One of the reasons that happens, what are the underlying reasons that this happens? One of the reasons is nobody, again, it goes back to that common language. Nobody has any idea what you mean by must have, ought to have, nice to have. Nobody knows what you mean by that. And so we all bring our own opinions to that, even if we've got data. For example, let's say we're all looking at prioritizing this list. Well, Linda says, oh my gosh, we have to prioritize this because this will help us globalize. But Supal says, oh, no, I get that, Linda, but my thing is really important because this is for our top 10 biggest customers. But then Lankus says, oh, but you guys, I get it, you want to do that, but this is our biggest selling product. Well, all of those are perfectly logical reasons to put something at the top of the list. The question is, for a period of time, what are you focused on as an organization? What is your vision and strategy as a company? Or, if you're a huge company, maybe it's a product portfolio, but at some meaningful level for a meaningful period of time, you have to have some sort of sifting mechanism that you're all using in common. And that's something we talk about in focus class in great depth. So once a year, align around a definition set that says, this is what we mean by most important, and give some examples. This is what we mean by number 2 or should have or whatever, and number 3 or whatever your prioritization process is. If everybody's bringing a very good reason to the table, it's really hard to then sit and sort of try to discuss why we're going to do one thing and not another. Because chances are, if it made it that far, it is important to somebody. Get that larger version, because then you're all dealing with the same definition of low, medium, and high. Really important, kind of important, sort of important. If you don't do that, you're always going to be bringing the best argument for each element, and you'll never be able to prioritize.
And who gets to choose which of the priority methods is higher? Is that the executives, or is that the market somehow telling us what should be the higher priority?
Honestly, that's what you have to do. So if you've got a product portfolio, it should be whoever heads that portfolio who makes the final decision. Ideally, that person is also then looking upward as well to the highest levels of strategy in the company. So you're really tying vision to the activities everybody sits down at their desk every day to do. And so if it's you, start with you. This is the most important thing always. Start with you and your product. If you are in charge of one product, start with you and say, okay, how am I contributing to the vision of our portfolio? Okay, so here's my definition. This way you've taken personal responsibility for prioritizing your own stuff. That's the place to start. And so if you take your prioritization in, I remember doing this and having development say, I can't believe you actually said this was a 3 or this was a 2. And I would tell them how I made the decisions, and other product managers would actually say, oh, okay, I see how she's doing this. Mm-hmm. If you've got the ability to network with your own peers, say, look, you know what, it would help us all if we all got together and said, this is our scoring system. Can we agree to a scoring system and just see how it works? You can always say we'll have exceptions. Just remember to track the exceptions so that if somebody like, Sarah is coming in with 15 exceptions on an 18-thing list, you can call her on it. Bring it together that way. It's almost like, what was it, Terminator 2? Where it was the guy who was made of that weird alloy metal, and they kept
Judgment Day, yeah.
Judgment Day, they kept smashing him apart, but his little droplets would come back together, and then he'd be a person again. So sort of bit by bit, like you're one little drop of this alloy, just do your own thing for a bit, and then see if you can get somebody else to do it with you. And then maybe see if you can do it for the portfolio. Pretty soon you've stood up a Terminator that takes care of all of those problems, those rogue builds, those confusing ideas. Just start where you are and build from there. But do create that consistency.
The Terminator theory of prioritization.
It's the Terminator theory of prioritization.
Go buy the domain name.
Yeah, so who has a question? Does anybody on the call have a question? We don't want you not to ask your questions. So don't be shy.
They're thinking.
Yeah.
So Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Diane, thank you. Sorry, my first time joining the sessions and first question. So so we do win-loss interviews at my organization, but can you talk broadly about other validation techniques or other kind of, because doing win-loss gives you one perspective, right? And it's kind of distinct. You don't choose, but you reach out to a number of customers, and then some agree, some don't want to agree. But what other techniques have you come across that seem to work if we need a different sort of perspective, right? To kind of have a broader result base beyond win-loss.
Good question.
So yeah, and I'm going to answer this briefly and then check to make sure I'm answering what you're asking. So when I think about that, what I think about is additional context. So I'm thinking about, I don't want to just know win-loss for the market, or even the, not just the wins, but the losses, but also I want to know what's coming next in their world. I want to know what they're worried about. And so some of those things are going to be things like the world of their regulations. So you need to keep up with what's going on in the regulatory world that impacts them. Maybe there are big lawsuits happening between the leaders in their markets. And you think, okay, well, but that's not a market thing, is it? It can be. I had an example of that in my world, where a big publisher a big university was suing a very big publisher for the rights to use their content in a certain way. And the whole university world was looking at that, waiting to see how that lawsuit was solved, because they were either going to keep buying our product or not keep buying our product because of it. Let me tell you, having that insight was massive in our preparation to be ready in case it happened. So things like that. So is that what you're looking for? Maybe more of the perspective of the industry itself so that you can be prepared? Or are you thinking more about just other facets of win-loss? Because both of those are good questions.
That kind of gave me an answer, but I was thinking, okay, so we use win-loss to go validate what our hypotheses are, what we think our customers chose us or didn't choose us, right? And that gives us one way. So those are broader techniques, right? What else can we use on a more mass basis to kind of get other feedback from the market, from existing customers? So I'm thinking beyond NPS. Okay, we do NPS anyway. Our support team send an Uber-like survey after a ticket has been opened or closed. But what else can we do to kind of get other feedback from maybe the silent 80%, right? From the broader users of the product, yeah, as well.
Great question. Thank you for clarifying, because I don't want to ramble on and not answer your question.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
A couple things with that. One of those is, if your markets have associations, get into that quiet group, because they're not coming to you, they're not volunteering. Leverage the groups they belong to, where they do talk, where they are active, even though they're not your customers. One of the ways to do that is to offer to sponsor a survey, to join, and it can't be too much of a product survey. But if you're really looking for market information, it isn't one of those anyway. So reach out to associations. Sometimes you can even write questions for them, like 1-question surveys where they can click through and see the data immediately. Those are the kinds of things, especially if they're topical, that people like to participate in. You're giving them something back. So I might be curious about the answer of, what do people think about this regulation? Are they going to ignore it and risk a fine, or are they going to follow it? That's a good example of something that an association might post for you. So it's not on your site, because that might be only where customers come. They might post it on their site. If you write these questions, or maybe sponsor the tech talk corner or something. And I've had a couple students bring this up over the past almost 5 years. So that's something I would say people are doing. That's a way to do it. Another way, it's slower, but reach out and ask them to do interviews on your site. A lot of people like to be seen as experts. So even people who aren't volunteering might want to come on and act as an expert. Popping a one-question survey in various spots throughout your product, throughout your training. So customers who don't volunteer a lot of information. In your training, hey, you think you're going to use this product? You think you're going to use this tool? You think you're going to use this report? Those are things you can do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we've got a couple of people who are posting questions. So Eddie, what else have we got?
We do. I'm gonna read we've got a couple questions going over in the chat. I'm gonna read them out loud for anybody watching on YouTube that doesn't see the chat. But Lanka posted, I want to follow up on Linda's previous question of getting started on product management in her new job. Do you think she needs to establish some sort of pragmatic product management process first, then fill with the templates for each activity she defines? Linda responds, I'm in a new product operations role. It's new for our company. Does Pragmatic have any courses or resources for product operations? Something to help her get up to speed quickly. What do you think, Diane? Can we offer anything to help there?
Well, if we're thinking about if it's more like program management, so you're making sure that everything's getting done, you're making sure that you've got the skills inside the organization. I would definitely, Foundations is always good. Foundations is good for anybody who's part of the product process. It's good because it establishes that common language. So I always recommend that not only the product managers, product marketers, but also project managers, operations managers, customer service, and tech take those, and program managers, simply because it's common language. Then I would recommend Focus. So Focus would be the other one, because it's that establishment of those processes in a more specific way. It talks about how to decide what to do, which I think that if you're talking about operations and product,
that's more of what we're doing. We're trying.
Yeah.
I think somebody else talked about project management. We don't want to get mixed in with project management. Like if it's
right.
a project, we want to make sure we assign a project manager. We don't want to use product operation resources. We really want to be able to streamline and develop processes that are efficient and that'll support the product organization.
And,
so it sounds
really
like
for you, I would say Focus is the best class. The second piece, though, after that is going to be two-pronged, because if you're thinking about the go-to-market team. So go-to-market is going to be, of course, then, understanding your buyers and how they buy, and then how to launch. So those classes would be good. But if you're really thinking about getting the product as far as our door, so sort of up on our factory shelf versus from the factory shelf to the customer, I would say go on to take Build class, because Build is where we take Focus class one step deeper and answer that question about all of these requirements seem to be equally important. How do I decide? We talk about a very specific process to go through to make those decisions. So that's that very execution oriented, but it all builds on the Focus class, which is how are we deciding what to build in the first place? How are we deciding what problems to solve? And so I would say, depending on where you think your organization has the most challenge right now, or everywhere. If it's everywhere, it might actually be easier to start with the execution-oriented items because you'll get quicker hits. So you might want to start, I would start with foundations class, period, because you need the common language. You might actually want to start with build class and then go back to focus because you've got a background. If you brought people who had a background in process, you could do it that way. It isn't as logical to do it that way, but if you all acknowledged that, hey, we're trying to get quick hits first, and then we're going to go back to the broader, more strategic, what should we be building in the first place? Because you're not going to stop everything that's happening right now. It might be better to go to build first and then go to focus.
Diana, I'm going to jump in with a quick question that Dolores posted over in the chat, just for anyone who might have the same question. Can you, we're going to ask you about titles. And I know titles is just this weird squishy area, but
it is.
Could you do your best to distinguish for us the difference between product manager, project manager, and program manager? 3 terms we've used in the discussion today, but what's the general difference between those?
What are the general differences in those? So first of all, product manager and project manager. Often those can get confused in practice, although interestingly enough, very seldom in hiring, which is good news. Product managers are the experts on the market. So they're experts on the buyer, they're the experts on the user. What they do is gather, organize, analyze, and prioritize the market problems and then communicate those market problems in the form of requirements to the teams that are going to develop the product, market the product, and sell the product. So that's what that person is responsible for. The project manager is responsible for making sure all of those other teams that are going to do the execution, the response to the market problems, are getting things done on time based on the expectations of our organization. So the project manager is often running one product line or one product, one project. The program manager is often like the general contractor, figuring out what resources are going to be needed when inside our organization in order to fulfill all of these projects that are happening. And that's the definition that I've worked with in my career. And then over the course of time working with Pragmatic and looking at some of the standards, those are the definitions that I see as closely standard as possible out in the world.
There we go. Dolores, I know she's dealing with some barking dogs at the moment, so she's on mute, but hopefully that helped her.
And don't worry about it.
Go ahead.
Barking dogs and we have cats and dogs.
That
totally
never
fine.
happens to me. A barking dog. How embarrassing.
I have my door closed so my enormous 17-pound Siamese won't come in and jump up here and destroy everything. But yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that definitely helps. That helps quite a bit. So I probably need a project manager on the team.
Project management and program management are just worth their weight in gold.
Right. Because I think right now, since my team consists of just us product managers, we're dual roles. And at that point, we're kind of handling all of that as well.
Yeah. That's usually what happens.
Because Dolores, we just had a team meeting with our product ops and we're being asked to do project management type stuff. And we're like, no, because then we can't be strategic. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're finding now. We're spread too thin and it feels, and we feel it. So.
And you always get pulled into that execution because it's so immediate.
Right.
Yeah. That's what happens when you do both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, lovely people, our time has flown. We have reached that minute where we need to wrap it up, but we have to do one more really fun thing, of course. Diane, you get to give away a free lunch today to the person whose questions submitted to us live here you enjoyed the most. It is completely arbitrary. You can choose it based on content or you can choose it based on the color of their background. Maybe their background is actual real live books, which is a cool reason to vote for somebody too. But what do you think, Diane? Who gets the free lunch today?
You know what? I have to say every question is a good question. So I'm not going to choose that way. What I'm going to literally do is I'm going to do this and I'm going to point to somebody on my screen and that's who's going to win, because I truly believe anybody who sits here, asks a question, participates, thank you for being here. So I'm closing my eyes.
Close the eyes. Okay.
Okay.
Who's it going to be?
It's Dolores.
Dolores
Okay, so
of the
Dolores-
Barking Dogs. Congratulations.
Dolores of the Barking
You get a free lunch.
Dogs.
Dolores,
you.
if you would send me your email, you can just send it to me
Okay.
to myself in the chat if you like.
Okay.
But make sure I get that before we end the call today, and we'll send you out your gift card for a free lunch. How about
Thank
that?
you. Thank you.
And I'm
So
also
much
going to
fun.
post my email. If anybody ever wants, I mean, and you can contact there's an instructor here every single week. But if you'd like to chat with me at any time, I'm just going to send you my email too. But I do
What
really
a
encourage you to get
fantastic
that.
resource that is. Thank you, Diane.
You're very welcome.
You're going to regret that, Diane.
Yeah.
She's like, I'll use it.
Absolutely. And talk to each other, get in the pack. If you have any difficulty getting in, do contact our administrators because or me. We will make sure you get into the pack because it is where all the action is. So
I did have a quick question about the pack. Should we register with our personal email or our work email?
Have we made a decision on that? I think I would have you, if I were to do it, I'd do a personal email just
So
in
that it
case,
follows
because
you?
you're going to want
Yeah.
to keep that.
Yeah.
It's a lifetime resource. So
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
it.
But
keep
is it
close at
okay
hand.
to, like, I also signed up for some notifications. Like, that's how I found out about this. I did that through my work email. So I might have two Pragmatic. I might be on your
I think you'll
distribution
be fine.
twice.
And if you ever have some problem with that, we can merge it together too.
Absolutely can.
I got to give a heads up for the next in our product chat series. If you attend those, these are fantastic resources as well. The next one is Tuesday, March 9th at 1:30 Eastern Time. We will welcome senior UX designer Mike Donahue to discuss the Noster model. That's Noster with a K-N-O-S, Noster model. It's a proven framework for change management, providing the tools you'll need to gain buy-in and drive adoptions. That's going to be a cool discussion. So join us for that one. And then,
Do you
of
have
course,
a link to that?
Yeah, you can find it on our website. If it go up to the top where it says events, and you'll find it. It's the next one posted. Tuesday, March 9th is when that one was. And then, of course, if you haven't had enough of us yet and you still got more questions, come back every Friday right here for the Ask Me Anything session with a Pragmatic Institute instructor. They are so fantastic with their time and knowledge, and we appreciate the resources. So Diane, thank you yet again. It's been lovely. And everyone who joined us today.
Yes, thank you all for being here.
Happy Friday, all. Stay healthy and safe. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Dolores, I did get your email, so you're good.
Okay,
We'll send you
awesome.
that.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That over today, Dolores. Check your spam if you don't receive it, or she can hop off. Fine too.
You missed her, but I'm going to send you the email. Sarah, you know you have 2 accounts in our Slack.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah and Callie. All right, there is Dolores.
While you're up there, can you go click on live on YouTube because you're the host now since I dropped off, and just click stop.
Done.
If you don't do that, you'll be there all day with camera running, not realizing you're live on YouTube.
That
For
would be fun.
everybody to watch you work.
As I'm picking my nose or something.
Yeah, like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
All right.
I know.